Forum have called on the two leaders to give Kenyans a break and think of ways to foster unity.
The Kenyan public is being treated to a public display of utter hostility between the head of state and his deputy. Something unseen or in a magnitude never witnessed before in our country, which is a recipe to divide our people. These offices are bestowed with great honor by our Constitution and trust by the people of Kenya and should not be demeaned. We therefore call on President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto to give Kenyans a break. Kenyans gave you the mandate to govern on the basis of our Constitution and laws. That mandate came with the clear responsibilities and expectations. The presidency is the greatest symbol of national unity and is a dignified office. Today, we particularly wish to ask the President to demonstrate statesmanship befitting the dignity, esteem, and honor of that high office of the President of the Republic of Kenya. We ask the President, in his last term, to unite the country. The best legacy to Kenyans for him will not be who he will endorse as the next president, but whether we shall have a peaceful transition.
Okay, so some leaders right there from the religious sector just adding their voice to the current political landscape in the country. And it's quite interesting since the deputy president and the president seem to be reading from different scripts, but both are pushing for the national unity agenda. Let's bring our panelists to add his voice on this particular matter. I'm joined by Dr. Nelson Makanda, who's the General Secretary of the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya. It's great to have you with us. Good morning. I'd like to begin with your reaction on the current position we find ourselves as a country. National unity is definitely on the tongues of these political leaders, but in terms of practicing, there might be a couple of issues when it comes to differences, perhaps personal differences, ideological differences, but at the end of the day, national unity is still a goal we need to achieve. So what's your reaction when you see the president and the deputy speaking or talking from reading from different scripts, but at the end of the day, they're supposed to serve the agenda of the people who voted them in the office? But what's your take on this?
Thank you very much, Rogers, for having me on this program today. Perhaps I'll begin by saying that the matter that the Muslim leaders, NAMLEF, have just spoken to is a critical matter. The Evangelical Alliance of Kenya issued a statement last week on Thursday, and we made an appeal to His Excellency the President, Uhuru Muigai, and his deputy, His Excellency William Ruto, to consider toning down their rhetoric against each other because it portends conflict, it communicates bad blood, but it also communicates perhaps immaturity on the part of leadership. And so we have urged them, and we do know that they are listening. It's possible that they may be pushed by those that are cheering them on. And for us, it's not to blame any other person who is party to it, apart from these two. And we would like to request them, by the mercies of God, just like the other Muslim leaders have said, that it is important that they consider the unity of this country. Kenya is greater than individuals, and perhaps they should learn from Professor Saitoti. When Saitoti was faced with such a critical thing, instead of standing up and fighting, he said there comes a time when a country is more important than an individual. Mm-hmm. And perhaps it's important that the president notices that, the deputy notices that. They were handed a country that was united and peaceful, and the Honorable Mwai Kibaki did his best to stay away from cementing and fomenting tension when he was handing over leadership. And he allowed them to come over without unnecessarily dividing the country. And so we would like to ask that the deputy president respects the president. We would like to ask that the president respects his deputy, because they hold constitutional and national offices. We have given them trust. They must demonstrate leadership, because that's what we demand and desire from them.
Okay, speaking of demonstrating leadership, the church as well is a leader in society when it comes to religious matters. And I beg to ask a question, as the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya, what's your position when it comes to politics and religion? At times they're interlinked to the point that these politicians use the podiums, the political pulpits, the church pulpits rather, to pass a political agenda. Should there be a line between politics and religion? What's your take on this?
Allow me to begin by rephrasing this question and situating it properly, because sometimes we have been told that the church and Christians and clergy should stay away from politics. Perhaps that's a wrong view, because God did not create two worlds. God created one world. Politics is about resources, it's about leadership, it's about governance. And so when governance is bad, it's our children who don't go to school, it is us who do not have food, it's us who suffer from high prices of, cost of living. It's us who are displaced, and sometimes when people are displaced, they come to our churches for refuge. And so the matter of separation of politics and religion is neither here nor there. It is a philosophy that was created by the Romans so that then they take away the influence of the church from the core of governance and leadership. Having said that, as I have done, it will be important to underscore that in trying to do and to engage in politics, it's important that church leaders and religious leaders realize that amongst their congregation, amongst the people that they minister to, are people of different persuasions. And where the matters that are at hand is not a matter of good or bad, because that's where we can define a line. But it's just a matter of preferring one leader to another, or preferring this party to another, and there is no sin and there is no good or bad definition in between them. That then they must seek to be neutral. They must seek to be impartial. They must seek not to take parts and sides and to be partisan. Because in doing that, they not only hurt their own congregants, but then they will not be neutral arbiter should there be conflict. And so we would like to urge religious leaders, church leaders, as you engage in 2022 elections, to seek not to foment those who are belligerent by taking sides, one side against the other. Not to allow politicians to engage on our pulpits and in the sanctuaries in a manner that is divisive. We can honor and respect our leaders when they come to worship by asking them to greet, but to the extent that they stand on the pulpit and begin to throw insults to other or at other leaders using the space that is supposed to be holy, those things can never be spoken about on our pulpits. And so we want to urge the religious leaders. As the EAK, we have taken a position, and we would like to roll out from this coming month of September a civic education for religious leaders. Perhaps we appreciate that some pastors and some clergy do not have capacity in terms of how do you treat and handle power when it comes around you. When leaders come into the sanctuary, how do you treat them? How do you relate with them? How do you engage with them with honor and respect, but not losing your ground? So that is a responsibility that we want to take upon as the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya, to try and empower our clergy so that they take their role as they should take it.
So even as we empower the clergy, are you saying, because we've had this from various denominations, the PCA have mentioned that politicians should not be given a forum on our pulpits to conduct politics, but should instead attend church services like anyone else. Is this what you're taking? Is that the stand you're taking as the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya?
Ideally, that should be the position. That when people come to church, they have come to worship God. And nobody is greater than the other. But perhaps some people have come as visitors. So we acknowledge them as visitors, but not create a scene where we convert a day of worship and a place of worship into a campaign platform. And so I support that position from the PCA Church, the position also postulated by the Most Reverend Archbishop of the Anglican Church, Sapit, and the position the other day also stated by Archbishop Kivuva in Mombasa. Yeah. I think that is the position to take. And as the Evangelical Alliance, we are not departing from that position, but we are acknowledging the fact that perhaps some amongst our clergy do not have the required capacity to be able to deal with these challenges. And so we will give them that capacity. Okay. We will go beyond just telling them, do not do it, but we will train them and give them the capacity to be able to handle power when it comes close to them.
Do you think that will work at the end of the day? Because we've seen these bans time and time again, but still, due to perhaps the ban on political gatherings outside, those gatherings tend to move inside the church and they take advantage of the pulpit to pass an agenda. Maybe amekaribishwa kuongea mawili matatu, just speak on what you have to do, welcome to this church, but they take advantage of that and push a narrative further. Yes, there's a ban in place, but the efficiency of this ban, does it work at the end of the day? Do you think education in terms of this churchmen and women will definitely help?
Perhaps it would be nice to say that it is difficult to enforce a ban.
Okay.
Because churches are institutions and they're independent institutions. The rest of us are only alliances and federations and councils that provide a platform for them to be able to express themselves and express and have a common platform of engagement. Right. But even within the institutions themselves, it will possibly happen a bit more in the episcopal-led churches that have hierarchical type of rank and leadership, where then when a decision is made at the top, is implemented downwards. But you realize that many churches across the country are actually independent institutions, either a standalone institution or congregations have some sense of autonomous to the extent that it is very hard to say that you can implement a ban because freedom of religion and freedom of expression are enshrined in the Constitution. It is a matter of discretion and decorum on the part of church leadership. And so we will be speaking to them from that point of view, that it is matter of your discretion, but also applying decorum and self-control, so that then you are making a judgment for the greater good, not for momentarily benefit to be seen posing with a political leader, or perhaps you want a harambe for your church, and so you are seeking to be able to get 200,000 shillings, and so you provide the opportunity for this politician, but yet we have been running church when these people have not been coming to church for the last 4 years. Right. They haven't been to church. And so we should not feel like this is the time that we must have them. They haven't been coming to church for the last 4 years. And when they come, we honor and respect them and allow them to worship with us, but we do not exchange our pulpits with our politicians. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Building of churches is also a controversial topic when it comes to leaders and their freedom of worship. Because at times it seems like rent-seeking. They're there to perhaps worship, and there's nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, they might hand in sums of money, and we've had politicians question the source of this income that is being handed to the church. So what's your take on this in terms of rent-seeking, in terms of calling a politician to help in terms of building a place of worship? Well, where do you draw the line?
I think, allow me to say that institutions and churches across the ages have had patrons. So the issue of patronage in trying to establish an institution, either a school or a church building, is a matter that has been funded by those that are well-wishers. Right. And so politicians as well-wishers and businessmen as well-wishers and members of the congregation are allowed to participate, to be able to build an institution or to create an infrastructure that enables people to worship or go to school or a hospital. I think where it becomes wrong, it's where that patronage becomes a means, an exchange, whereby you are seeking for votes, you are seeking to change my mind, you are seeking to influence a certain view and ideology, and so you are buying it. And so perhaps that's what you're calling a rent-seeking. And so it's to let religious leaders know that when you receive this money, sometimes you are shutting your opportunity and your mouth from speaking prophetically. against the ills that politicians will create within society. You talked about perhaps money that is ill-gotten. I think that for us it is neither here nor there, because church never stops to ask anybody, where did you get your money? As you're bringing your money to church. And so it will not start today because a politician has come to church and he has given his money. That is a responsibility of institutions of government, because taxpayers have invested enough and Kenyans are able to pursue those who are corrupt, and so they cannot pursue people who have come to church and begin to say they have come with ill-gotten wealth. I think they cannot demand the church to implement that type of a requirement. But however, it will be important that churches allow worshippers to do their worship peacefully and quietly. When people come to give their money, let them do so as an offering. When all of us come to give, our money is never announced. Receive the gifts, but do not make a sin about it, so that then people they are more happy because they are being celebrated for what they have given, rather than being happy that they have come to worship God.
Okay,
yes.
The publicization of this handouts is usually questionable. But let's talk about the role of the church when it comes to the political discourse in this country. If I look at the past, and our parents will definitely tell us that when it came to the clamor of multi-partyism in this country, not just the civil society, the church was at the forefront in pushing for this. And they involved themselves in terms of lining up with the opposition to fight for multi-party democracy during President Moi's one-party rule. So fast forward right now, we have politicians, most of them who are in government, who have made the pulpit an integral part of their campaign platforms. In terms of shifting sides, would it be logical to question in terms of why the church would actually play a role, or what role it does play in terms of pushing this campaign agendas when it comes to pro-government support and anti-government support? How do you look at this?
Allow me to say that in the yesteryears, the church was not neutral, or the church was not indifferent to what was happening within society. The church took a principled position to say that this constitution is not serving us. That is not a neutral position. The church took a position to say that the leadership that we are having, once party governance, perhaps is not what we anticipate to have as a society. We need to open up this space and create multiplicity of ideas and opportunity to get leadership that is varied, rather than being championed by one party. And so the church, in those days that we are talking about, took a position. And the position that the church took was actually a political position, to begin to engage society and to tell society it's important you review how you are governed. Perhaps it is now to fast forward and begin to say those days are not here. We already have gotten the space that we needed. We have already sorted out the ills that were attendant with single-party rule. As we are today, we are a multi-party society, and since we are a multi-party society, how do we entrench democracy and governance in a manner that we do not foment conflict and division and schism against each other, so that then we are fostering what is the greater good? And perhaps as we engage in that manner, is to say that the church will actually require to sit and evaluate. Do we need to have a philosophy of engagement? Do we need to have a content-based engagement, so that then we are directing engagement other than leaving the space, so that then it's dictated upon by politicians? They come and they dictate on us, instead of us beginning to say, this is what we are looking for. We are going into 2022. We want leadership of this manner. We want a leader who will communicate these characteristics, a leader who will care about the citizens, a leader who will deliver good for citizens. So perhaps, how do we change that narrative as the church? So that is the question that we need to ask ourselves internally. And at the EAK, we would like to engage in that manner.
Okay.
So that then we are shaping the narrative other than letting the politicians be the ones to shape the narrative when they appear or when they don't appear.
So, Dr. Makanda, I mean, we were just celebrating recently 11 years since the promulgation of the 2010 Constitution,
Right.
and the conversation was sort of skewing towards Chapter 6 when it comes to integrity of these leaders. So what role can the church play in terms of not just making sure the law is followed to the letter, but implementing as well? When we look at the leaders, are they the embodiment of Chapter 6 when it comes to integrity and the values they uphold? What role can the church play, directly or indirectly, in terms of influencing the kind of leadership we have in this country?
I think Chapter 6 was a wonderful document.
Yeah.
But to roll out Chapter 6, a law was created, and part of that law said that you cannot bar a political leader from running, even if they have been accused before a court of law and they have been convicted before they have finished their appeal.
Yes.
And so I think what the church has advocated for, and even when this BBI rule law was being drafted, bill was being drafted, the church pleaded with the protagonists. We met the leaders of BBI. We met the highest office in this land and told them we need to expunge this clause from our law. Because that's where the problem is. We have a very good Chapter 6, but then we have created an impediment to implementation of Chapter 6 by saying if you find a leader who is guilty of corruption or of impugning Chapter 6, you will not bar them from running for a political office if they have not completed their appeal process. Okay. And you know, appeal process now goes up to Supreme Court. So you begin at the law court, you go to the High Court, you go to the Court of Appeal, and you go to the Supreme Court. That in its entirety can take you 10 years.
Okay.
So that leader will actually be leading and running. So perhaps how do we drive the Chapter 6 agenda is the question that we need to ask. But for us, as religious leaders on our part, since the matter of appealing the Constitution has been spoken about by the courts, yeah, and it's subject of discussion, we would like to do a civic education. What is the right and privileges of a Christian citizen or a private citizen? So that then we are telling them, you have a responsibility to exercise your freedom at the ballot, and it's perhaps the only time that you have your freedom 100% to choose. Once you have chosen, you have delegated your responsibility to either a broker, to either a businessman, to either an immoral leader, to either a thief. But if you choose well, okay, then you can choose a leader who embodies the characteristics of good leadership.
So I beg to ask, has, yes, the church failed in that particular sector? Because the narrative out there, there's no bad publicity. It's all good publicity. You might be mentioned in a certain case, but according to your constituents, that mtuwetu mentality is still deeply entrenched in the society. At the end of the day, we tend to celebrate those who have been mentioned or those who are enjoying proceeds of corruption, instead of pushing them aside. Has the church failed in changing that narrative? Because it's the society at large that perhaps pushes that particular narrative, no bad publicity amongst politicians.
Allow me to say two things. That the church perhaps is the second most influential institution in this country, next to the Fourth Estate. And perhaps the next institution that is influential is the education system, the teacher. Okay. And it's got to be a collaborative attempt. It is not a finger pointing. It's perhaps saying, how do we use the education system to be able to teach our children that this is humanity, and so that then we lower the value that we place on ethnic identity and personality identity, and begin to think about humanity, what is good for humanity. But we also think about the media. How can the media, together with the church, partner together to be able to say, this is what we are looking for in leadership. Do not elect somebody because you share ethnic identity. That does not mean that that leader will deliver good for you. It does not mean that your life will change, that the cost of living will come down, that there will be healthcare facility services that are accessible, that education will be affordable, that there will be food security in the country. It does not necessarily follow. So we must be able to collaborate with each other, all the stakeholders that mean well for this country, so that then we are not pointing fingers at the church or pointing fingers at the media or pointing fingers at the civil society, perhaps saying, how can we collaborate together? So that then we are talking to Kenyans as an entity, so that you and I, Jesse, are standing together and saying, as you go to vote, please think twice. Think twice who you are casting your vote for, because that person for the next 5 years, you have delegated your responsibility to them. Exercise your responsibility with discretion, utmost discretion. But also now for Christians is to say it is worship to God. When you go to choose a leader, you are actually, it's an act of worship. What will God have you do as you go to the ballot? Then that way, your mind will be influenced differently. You will think about, is this leader one who can glorify God? Is this a leader, one who will serve a Kikuyu just as well as he serves a Luo? Or this is a leader who will divide communities against each other?
So perhaps a multi-pronged approach is the best way in terms of influencing these voting patterns. As we conclude, Dr. Makanda, let's talk about the time we're in as a country. 11 months barely to the general election. We've just had the BBI, the reggae, and all that. And now with the general election coming, it's usually a polarized time if history serves us correctly. So what role can the church do in terms of, changing the narrative, cutting out those insightful remarks from the pulpit, perhaps, even as the Fourth Estate does its part as well in blocking out these negative comments that tend to incite the public? Talk to us.
Number one, for us at the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya, we have rolled out a program called Situation Room. And in this program, Situation Room, we want to do several things. We want to do monitoring of elections beginning now to 9th and post 9th of August next year. And we will be looking at what are the warning signs, what are the rhetorics that are being projected out there from the ward level. And so we are going to have monitors from now at every ward across the country where we have presence, so that then we are beginning to pick out what are the warning signs. And these messages will be collected in a situation room where it will be analyzed, and it will have to trigger a response, either to those that are duty bearers, if it is security agencies, if it is IBC, if it is NCIC, it will trigger a response, and we will be able to alert where an alert is required. Where civic education is required, we are going to engage in robust civic education in our program across the country, so that on our pulpits, we talk about qualities of leadership. What is it that we are looking for in leadership? And unity is going to be a critical pillar. How do we foster unity as a nation, but as a community? And then secondly, development. Are these leaders that are mindful and conscious of the development agenda of the people? But then we will also be thinking about what are the safety nets of our people: food security, education, and healthcare. How can we be able to engender those things in the campaign, so that then by the time when our people come to an election, they are conscious. If they make a wrong decision, it's not out of ignorance. They have made a wrong decision with their eyes open. And so we will do our responsibility as an institution. We will let Kenyans make their own decisions, and we will collaborate with all institutions. We want to have collaboration with the media, collaboration with the institutions of government. We would like to appeal even to our politicians to honor and respect institutions around these elections. Because if you do not honor institutions around these elections, then you foster mistrust, and that mistrust might result in conflict at the end of the day. And so respect and honor IBC, respect and honor the police service, respect and honor the judiciary, respect and honor institutions that have been given to us to midwife an election. And that will be an engagement that we will be doing. But then we will eventually seek to partner with those who want to partner with us in creating awareness about candidates. So profiling candidates and asking them, what are you capable of doing? Okay. Are you able to deliver what you are saying you can deliver? So that then we together evaluate these candidates and present them before the electorate as a people, so that people make choices that are informed, not from the point of view, this is my relative, this is my tribe, or this is my alma mater, or those other